All right. We're live on Las Vegas Tri Club Facebook page. We're recording. It's Friday night. Time to talk triathlon.
It is Friday night, evidence-based triathlon coming at you.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about our second snowfall of the year in Las Vegas. I got my beanie on because we're going to head out to the garage in a little bit, and it's kind of cold out there. But and it's also the start of spring break, and we've got snow in the valley. Very, very odd times in Las Vegas.
Yes, unbelievable. But I do remember where we had snow days. We had school canceled because of snow, and of course they canceled school, and then the snow melted, and everything was fine. So.
Yep, but very, very rare here. And so I took it upon myself to go out to Red Rock this morning, bright and early, and go for a run in the snow.
Yeah.
And it was just breathtaking out there, and there was nobody out there. I ran like 4 miles, saw 2 cars on the loop.
Oh wow, nice.
And so it was so just quiet. And we talked before about running and being trying to run quiet and listen to your feet.
Yeah.
This morning was perfect because it was just so silent out there because it wasn't windy.
No, it sounds different. It's
and the road was wet, so then it kind of amplified it even more. I'm like, okay, land soft.
Yeah.
It was almost surreal.
I tell you, when I lived in Buffalo for my undergrad days, I used to love running in the snow when it snowed, because it was surreal. It was just, everything sounds a little bit different because the flakes are coming down, and it feels different. If you just, got to watch your foot placement, and obviously you're going to change the way you run a little bit. Yeah. But still really, really enjoyable. And it almost seems to warm up a little bit when it's snowing. That's what's weird. So.
Cosmo couldn't really figure out what was going on as we were running and it was the big flakes.
Yeah.
And they'd be hitting him in the eyes, and he was just like, what's going on? So yeah, it was an awesome morning.
Would he wear booties?
I don't think he would. I think he would sit there and try and get him off. Yeah, maybe he would. Actually, I get more concerned with him in boots, like when we're out in the desert.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Rocks. He's cut his hands before, and then when we were at Valley of Fire, he actually got a cactus in his. Pretty good cactus in his foot.
Oh wow!
I think I'm more concerned about that, to be honest. But,
well, when I was running with my dog Luther back east in the Shawanaguns, he was an off-leash dog back then.
Yeah.
It was fun, but he sensed something. He went off and chased it, and he came back and he had a quill full of porcupine, or his nose was full of porcupine quills. So then we spent the next 2 hours trying to pull them out. He didn't like that. So.
No, not at all. Oh. Goodness.
Oh, good memories.
Yeah. It's kind of that's scary stuff. So it's the porcupine, because you got.
Well, so all right, so you
right.
What's that?
Because it kind of hooks in too, doesn't it?
It does, and that's why you gotta try to pull them out in a way that they don't break off and get stuck inside. And so,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, he didn't quite understand the concept of that, though. So he was not too happy with the pliers, or.
No, I'm sure. Good times.
Yeah, no, he was a fun dog, but yeah. All right.
So John, looks like we're gonna have some racing coming up.
Yeah,
and,
boy.
Obviously there was a big race today in Miami. I unfortunately was working almost all day and didn't get a chance to watch it, but it's gonna be on MSNBC next week, so I'll watch it then. But and then hopefully the Tri Club's gonna have an event. Hopefully Rage goes off.
Yep. Well, we are looking like we're gonna get our permit. So
yeah. So
for April 3rd.
I think it's time to talk about actual racing and some things that some implications of racing.
Well,
and
let me give some breaking news, because this is that it also looks like we're going to do a swim run event in Lake Las Vegas. So that'll be a unique.
So that's actually a good question. So do you want to since we're the ones kind of put it together, do we want to do an actual swim run like an Otello?
Ooh, we could do that. Yeah, and we'll just have to look at the map and see how because we're down in that northeast corner of the lake.
So we could actually have a real swim run, not just an aquathon. could do a swim run event where you do like 3 swims, 3 runs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
it just got interesting. So there you go, folks. You heard it here first. We might be having an actual swim run. Swim run, swim run, swim run.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I mentioned the Shawanagons. That's the, you know, famous for,
Yep.
you know, what you do a 15-mile bike and then you run to a lake, you swim across the lake, run to the next lake. And I forget how many, I think it's 8 stages. I haven't done it. I always want to go back and do it, and I will one day. But yeah, those are events that are unique and fun to do. So
Exactly. So yeah, we get a lot on the horizon. You know, I'm still getting ready for St. George. I got 6 weeks to go. Everything looks like it's gonna happen.
yeah.
So yeah, things are starting to happen. So let's talk about transition today and running off of the bike
Yeah.
in particular and running. So John, what is it? You know, I've actually had some people reach out to me and ask me personally, what can I do to make my legs feel normal when I get off the bike?
Oh boy. All
So
right.
what advice have you given people? Like before we read the article we're going to talk about, but
Well, one, you need to prep for the run in your last portion of the bike ride. Not too soon, but you do need to start thinking about your run before you get off the bike. And then the transition actually just needs to be purposeful and deliberate, and you know, as quick as you can make it, but purposeful and deliberate, so that you can prep yourself again to start running. So in the race, those are things to do. But prior to racing, lots of practice.
Yep.
Lots of practice of transitioning between sports, even transitioning between swim and bike, as well as from bike to run. You've got to train the brain to figure out how to run after biking for whatever period of time your segment is.
yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think honestly a lot of it is mental.
Mm-hmm.
It is like I can do this. Like it's just a continuation. And I also think that, you know, there's been lots of podcasts and articles talking about that triathlon is a sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 3
right
separate sports. It's the person that can get from the start to the finish the fastest, or however fast. And so when we're training, we need to start thinking about that and combining training sessions. And I got to be honest with you, one of my least favorite things is to go for a 4-hour bike ride and then go for a run.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get home and destroy the fridge and then lay on the couch. But if you do it on a regular basis, and I know you're infamous for just 1 or 2 miles, right? And you know, as race season gets closer, I haven't been doing a lot of it right now. I've been, you know, doing more of it, and even I've been doing a lot of, actually the last 4 Saturdays I've done a run, swim, run. So I run to the pool, swim, go get coffee.
I love those types of things. I think that's great. It's all transition. It's not, you know, it may not be replicating an exact race situation, but it's training to transition between one sport and another.
Yeah. And then the fatigue that is associated with it, right? You know, when I'm 20K into that second run, and I had to swim in between it. I mean, it's a different kind of fatigue, and some of it's mental, right? It's a mental fatigue of 3 hours of doing stuff. And you know, just concentrating. Like we can get a little bit mindless on our bike rides, but it's harder to get mindless when you're running.
Yeah, right.
And nor should you.
Well, and partly because running, you're fighting gravity, you know, and so you go from a sport that we classify as non-weight bearing to a sport that is weight bearing, and your brain has to change. It has to change how it's recruiting, in essence, the same muscles, but recruiting them differently in order to run as best you can, as fast as you can.
Yeah. So I've been doing that a lot, and then we talked about last week. I've been doing the Zwift Duathlon series, and that is really helping me.
Oh, good.
My run speed is getting faster and faster every week, and of course it's on a treadmill, but you know, and it's actually going to go into what we're talking about today, because always the first mile or first kilometer is a little bit slower,
right?
But for me now, it's just like, it's on the treadmill. Like, how high can I turn it up?
Yeah, right.
Right. And mentally it's hard. It's hard in that first K to turn to get faster and faster. And then the second and third K is always really fast, or not, it's faster. And so that really goes into what we're going to talk about tonight in this research article that you found, which I honestly, I read it 2 times because it was deep. And, I am not a formal biomechanist,
Right.
and there was a lot of stuff here. So John, do you want to explain the article a little bit?
Yeah, so in my class, Biomechanics of Endurance Performance, all my students take a question that they have to answer. And they have to find some empirical evidence to support whatever answer they're going to give, and as well as some anecdotes. And so we're trying to merge those two worlds and either see where they agree or where they disagree. And so met with the students this last week, and one of them was struggling with finding information on transitioning. And I said, oh, well, let's quickly see if we can find your paper. So, in looking at transitioning, I think of it as really two things. One is it counts against your time. And so you need to be as efficient and quick as possible, because it's, the better you are in transition, the shorter your transition time is. It's we say it's free speed, because it doesn't cost anything metabolically. Oh, well, it does, but it's not running, biking, or swimming. It's doing something in between those. So the quicker you can bring that time down, and some races are notorious for having long transition zones.
Some 10 minutes.
10 minutes, that's right. And if you can knock a minute off of that, well, now you've taken a minute off your time, and that's not running faster, it's not biking faster, it's not swimming faster. So it's not training for your fitness in that world, but it's training, putting your shoes on. I know this is this really the second part of what we're going to do tonight is go through the transition to improve your time, but not having anything to do with the physiology of that. So that's one part. The other part, I think about what it's like to go from the biomechanics and physiology and control of one sport to another sport. And that transition, physiologically, biomechanically, or motor coordination wise, that takes some practice. And so, yeah, the student is struggling on finding the paper. So I quickly, did a search, and I came up with a paper. I think I can share it.
If you can,
wait, which window did my paper go to? It's okay, there it is. All right, let me bring it up. I did a search, and interestingly, I came up with this paper. Can you see the paper now?
Yep.
And that's my master's advisor right there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's Randy Jensen. What a great guy. Great mentor for me when I was down at University of North Texas. Now he's at Northern Michigan University. Great family man, really good biomechanist and exercise physiologist, just down to earth kind of thing. And so I said, oh, okay, well, you got to include this paper in your project because it's Randy Jensen. So I've got some good Randy Jensen stories still. So this, we came on this one, Triathlon Transition Study, quantifying the differences in running movement pattern and precision after a bike run transition. That's a lot to chew on.
Yeah.
In essence, what they were looking at is how well you were running after biking, and how well you were running if you were just started to run. And they were comparing your running movement patterns after biking versus just running. And in this case, they were looking at a 5K run. So, and they used a lot of motor coordination type of terminology and approach, where they're trying to quantify what we would call an attractor. And in the motor coordination area, an attractor is just a pattern that we naturally select. So a walking pattern, a running pattern. And we naturally move towards a particular group of movements that are really actually pretty tightly controlled. And it's hard to deviate. And we've talked about this in some of the other podcasts. And what's interesting is sometimes you move from one tightly controlled set of movements to another. And so we call each of those tightly controlled movements subtractors. Easy example is we're on the treadmill and you're starting off walking and you start increasing your speed. Well, you're attracted to that walking pattern, but at some speed, you're going to change your pattern and you're going to be attracted to a new pattern, and that's going to be a running pattern. And now you're going to be using that pattern as opposed to a walking pattern. And so there's subtleties within that too, because we could say there's jogging and there's running, and then there, you could even say something like sprinting. And so now you can start sort of teasing out different types of running patterns even. Well, and this approach to trying to understand coordination of movement has been used lots of different ways, and that's the approach they took here, is to look and see if the coordination was similar during running after a bike ride versus just running.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because just as we're talking about, after you bike hard, running does not feel good for the first 5 minutes at least.
Yeah.
And reading this article, it shows why.
That's what it said.
It says you are a mess. And but I will say that you're a mess, but you can train this, right? And you can become less of a mess.
That's right. And you can try to get to that natural pattern that you want to run in sooner. And so here's an example. This is exactly why I like doing this, because anecdotally, you already know the answer to this paper. And in this case, the anecdote worked well with the empirical evidence. And so that's great when that happens. It's actually great when it doesn't happen too, but
yeah.
There's a lot of times where anecdotally we think one thing and we do something empirically and it's like totally different.
But anecdotally, I would not have guessed the
second part
of this study, which I think was the most fascinating part of the study. But I guess anecdotally, I still do what I do before a 5K race.
I know.
So this doesn't happen.
I know. Yeah.
So let's talk about the other part. So first part is basically they did a 30-minute time trial, 95% of their FTP, which was, that's a hard effort, right? Yeah. And then they transitioned and ran a 5K.
Yeah.
And they looked at how they ran, and in the first kilometer, they ran poorly.
Yeah.
And then they had another group that did a 10-minute warm-up. In the warm-up, they actually ran relatively fast in the last couple of minutes of it. But then they had a little time, and then they ran. Yep. So what happened with that group, John?
Oddly enough, they ran poorly in the beginning too. Well, and I say oddly, or only oddly because what the research team was doing was trying to use that as the control condition.
Exactly.
They were not expecting that the runners would not, the way they ran would change over that 5K run without the bike ride in front of it. Yep. And so they actually saw that people were not running as well in the beginning of just the 5K with no bike ride in front of it.
Almost as poorly.
Yeah.
It was very close. And so, that led me to believe, and I don't know about you, John, that you need more than 10 minutes to warm up before you run a 5K.
Well, totally. And anecdotally, you already know this and you do this. And I knew this too, because back in the day when I actually was a decent runner, when I would go do a 5K especially, I'd have to do a 20-minute warm up. Okay. I knew it. I zeroed in. It was a 20-minute real life jog. And I needed to finish that warm up right before the start. And it's funny thinking about that. And so often what I do is run out on the course, do my warm up, and then come back so that I end up in the front of the pack. So and then the gun would go off. So,
the interesting thing though was you can't warm up on the bike, obviously.
Oh, right.
It's specific to the sport, so you have to warm up running.
Yep.
And you think, well, I've just ridden my bike for a half hour, I'm going to be warm.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to be warm,
mm-hmm.
right? Temperature wise,
mm-hmm.
and even your joints, synovial fluid, or the fluid in your joints, is going to be more less viscous.
Yep.
And there are things, but neuromuscularly, your body's a mess.
Yeah, right.
It hasn't figured out those movement patterns. And I honestly, this is one of my favorite articles I've read in a while, because there's so much good stuff here.
Yeah.
So John, I'm going to ask you a question. As now, this is purely as a thought process, because I doubt there's good research on this. Do you think it holds true for swimming?
Oh, you got me stumped here, because that's actually a complicated question.
I know it.
Are you? Oh, well, okay. Let me buy some time here. What event?
What I'm getting at is, let's say I wanted to swim a mile, a 1500,
Yeah, right.
an Olympic distance swim
Yeah.
for a triathlon. Do you suppose that my first 5 minutes are not my best swimming?
Okay, so yeah, and I think this is where you and I actually diverge a little bit in how we approach the start of a race, and how I actually approach my first length of my swim workout, because I think we do things a little bit differently. I do think you swim differently in the beginning, but I also think you can train that. And in triathlons, especially, the worst advice I see people give new triathletes is go hard that first 100 meters.
It's the worst advice.
That is downright, don't do that. Don't even do that if you're, top level triathlete. I mean, that's not.
Well, if you're a pro, different story.
There, the pro has a little bit more of an advantage, because now they are doing a pre-swim.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times we don't, as age groupers, have that ability to do a pre-swim right before you start. Yeah, you can probably go do a pre-swim, but then you may get 10, 15, 20 minutes before you actually start again. And at that point, it's not, I don't see the carryover. And that's partly what this study showed, is that they thought that maybe the 10-minute break between the warm-up and the start of the 5K was too long.
Yeah. But I also think that 10 minutes warming up is not enough.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, I do.
You said that 20 minutes for you was, I'm the same for a 5K. It'll be a 20-minute warm up, easy. So I feel good.
So back to the swimming. This is why my swim workouts, I jump in the water and I try to find my pace right away. And I don't do a lot of change in pace when I'm doing a long distance swim in the pool, because I want to practice that idea, or that phenomenon. What happens when we start a race is we get in the water. We got to find that pace and that coordination pattern as quickly as we can. And it's not, you're not trying to go fast in the beginning. You're trying to find that comfortable attractor movement pattern.
So then let's just say we'll take the race longer with running. Let's say you're going to do a half marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have the same mentality?
Oh yeah. I mean, for a half marathon running race.
Yeah.
Oh no, because I think with running, the problem is it's a weight bearing activity, and it's very different than cycling and swimming in that regard, because every time you put your foot hits the ground, you have to stop yourself from moving down, and then you have to propel yourself back up. It becomes a much more dynamic, I'll say demanding task than either swimming or cycling. I mean, swimming and cycling are almost all concentric contraction. I mean, they're all contractions that.
Well, they're all concentric. You're right.
That they don't lead to muscle damage due to the contraction. Whereas running, and we know that running downhill, you destroy your thighs afterwards.
I also think it's the coordination between, going from an eccentric contraction to a concentric contraction, and that's what's called the amateurization phase, right? So
right.
We're actually switching happens in running, and that is a neurologically very difficult thing to do for your body.
Yeah.
I think compared to concentric.
Okay, so two things on that I think are actually people might benefit from. One is looks like we're going to get in with another company on lower body positive pressure treadmills, which lifts you up while you run. And we've talked about this before. That actually might be a neat way to do that neurological training. We don't know for sure, but we've done some work on that, and we do see a similar movement pattern while running with lower body positive pressure, where you lift up so we weigh 80% of your body weight, something like that. Not everyone has access to that type of treadmill. That might change. We might have something happen in the works for this. The other thing is running in the water. we've done a lot of work on deep water running specifically. Deep water running is all concentric contractions.
No, there's no eccentric side.
That's right. It's no real apparent eccentric contractions.
Yeah.
But what we've noticed is as you go harder in running in the water, that movement pattern starts to look more like your running pattern. So what I tell people when they're using deep water running is you need to try harder in the water than on land, but so you do it in a short burst. But really, to your point, what you were just saying, I tell people you got to focus on that change in direction between hip flexion to hip extension, knee flexion, knee extension. And so that change in direction is probably really critical to getting the most out of running in the water.
Yeah. Super interesting stuff. Like, to me, the takeaway from the whole thing was, number one, you're just going to feel bad getting off the bike.
Right.
And if you can mentally, like for me, like, and this is my little tactic that I use during that first K or first 5 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever it is, I really am concentrating on running form.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
In my head, I'm like, okay,
Yep.
stand up tall,
Yep.
feet this width, be
Mhm.
soft.
Yep.
You know, really all of my cues that I do when I'm training,
Yep.
I focus really hard on that.
Yep.
And I try really hard not to let any other thing get in my way in my headspace at that time. I don't think about, man, I can't believe I messed up my transition. I couldn't get my shoe on. I try and be in the moment.
Yep.
And we have not really even talked about being in the moment for racing, and that whole side of the psychology of racing and psychology of training and being mindful. We'll eventually in this podcast get to talk about that, not tonight. But
Now,
I think that's really important to do at that time.
No, totally. But I'll say we have a colleague that does a lot of work on what you should focus on during movement, and what you focus on can actually influence how you move. And
Yeah.
so and this is Gabby Wolf, what a lot of her research is we should be focusing on something outside our body. And so not only, I think it's great thinking about stride rate, foot strike, things like that, but you probably might even benefit from looking at 5 feet in front of you and say, I'm going to run to that point or that point. It's a little different mindset, but
yeah. But and the question with her research, and I've read some of it, not all of it,
no.
but obviously, she's really into external focus, like you mentioned.
Right.
But I'd like to know the extent of external focus when you're changing discipline.
Yeah, no, that's right. Right.
Because when I'm swimming, I'm trying to be external focused. Yeah. Even when I'm running, just normal running, there's times when I'll think of external focused things. Yep. Because I think that there's something to that. But if we're trying to, once again, overcome this neurologic or neuro mechanical problem, I don't know the answer, because I
don't either. But the external, we don't know how far that external focus needs to be. It's not like you're looking 100 yards down. Your external focus on foot strike, where that focus strike, I think that actually falls within that same mindset. So
and one of my external focus is that the pulling the head up with a string.
That's right.
And that's external focus. Yep. So maybe it's a combination of both, but whatever it is, I still think you have to be mindful.
That's right. It's cues that's a big zero in on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then it's funny, right? And you and I have been through enough of the battles on the triathlon course. All of a sudden, I'm running.
Yeah, right.
It's really weird. Like, it's very, you don't know it when it happens, but all of a sudden you've taken 20 steps and you're like, oh, okay, I'm good.
Now, I'll say this is the problem of our triathlon club race course and Rage race course, because you just get to that point, maybe 200 yards away from transition, and then what? You're running uphill.
Or in Rage, you're running on gravel.
Yeah, or you're on gravel, especially on Rage. That's right. And some
I didn't get into my rhythm at Rage until you get onto the road.
Yeah,
and that's 7 minutes, right? About 7-8 minutes. So, but I find it really hard because the footing is horrible.
Yep.
and you're kind of bouncing around. And now I'd also contend that the amount of time on the bike does make a difference as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I also think that I feel better in a sprint race than I do in a half or even
Yeah.
an Olympic. Like
Yeah.
getting off the bike is not as,
Yeah.
and that could be just because I'm getting old and being tucked down in
Right.
a time trial position for too long. But yeah.
But the good thing about both our course and Rage course is by the time you hit about 1 mile, you've reached flat pavement, and boy, do you feel good then.
Oh man. As soon as you hit that flat pavement, it's like, I don't even know how to describe that feeling. It's like, yeah, you really do feel good, because I think you've been neurologically working really, really hard. And then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, I don't have to think about this anymore. I can just get the flow state and just run.
And so I think, and I think this is what you're saying is really critical, because there is a mental part. And so I'll tell anyone who's listening, if you're doing Rage or you're doing one of our club races, you just need to know everybody's suffering going up that first hill. And you can't let the mental aspect of that, how hard it is right then, come into play of the success that you're going to have later on. So
yeah, that's a great point, John. It's hard for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. When it's raining out, windy out, uphill, everyone's doing the same thing. And sometimes we get in our own head. Pumpkin Man's a really good example of that. That bike course is really hard.
Yeah, but I love the run course.
I know, but I love the bike course, but I know it's hard, right? But
I love the bike course too, but the run course
it's hard for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And oftentimes we get in our own head, oh man, this is so hard. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, it's hard for it's equally hard for everybody. And that's the best, that's the fun part about triathlon.
Yeah,
for sure.
Be a hard swim.
I hate those hard swims.
All right, well, let's switch gears.
Yes.
Speaking of biking, and let's talk about the other part of transition.
Yep.
Not only trying to get better to run afterwards, but how to find that free speed.
Yeah, so T1 and T2, it's really interesting. I pride myself on a fast T2.
Mm-hmm.
My T1 is always a mess.
Yeah.
It's just, I've practiced it in my garage. I practiced it on the street. I took a shower in my wetsuit.
Yeah.
I invariably, something goes wrong in T1, but now I've come to the point where I accept it.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. Like,
oh, nice. Okay.
And mostly it is because I have a hard time going from swimming to running and not cramping.
Yeah.
And to the point where I'll get out of the water. I'm like running. I'm good. I get to my bike. I lean down to put my shoes on. Cramp. Hamstring cramp.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so I have to now. I've come to the realization that I actually have to calm myself down.
Yeah.
And I've got to go. I have to go personally. I have to go a little slower in T1.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do my very best to make it up in T2.
Yeah, right.
I do not mess around in T2. It is fast. Like, when I look at the results, I want to be like the top 2 or 3% in T2. Yeah. Like I probably care more about T2 than I do maybe even like the run course, as far as like looking at. Can you? Because everyone's like, oh, what was your run split? Oh, it was this. What was your T2 split?
Yeah.
Oh, it's 45 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the average was like 130. Well, I made it 45 seconds there. Yeah.
Huge.
It's huge. And so once again, I don't take pride in T1, but I definitely take pride in T2.
Well, and I know you do a lot of swim training, but a lot of times when I'm doing my swim training, I'm actually just trying to swim enough so that it doesn't bother me getting on the bike. Yeah, I know that sounds odd, but I'm not trying to swim. I'm not doing my swim training to necessarily swim faster. I know that sounds odd. I am, but I'm not. I want to have enough fitness so that it doesn't bother, the swim segment doesn't interfere with my ability to bike.
And it for me, it never affects my bike. Mm-hmm. It only affects me getting my biking going, like getting my shoes on, getting my wetsuit off. I'll cramp getting my wetsuit off. Mm-hmm. So if you see me at a race, oftentimes what I do is I actually get out of the water, take one step on dry land, and take my wetsuit off.
Yeah.
Before I even run. because I've noticed that if I run with my wetsuit on and I get to my bike, I'm more likely to have a to cramp.
Interesting. Yeah. That can.
And, you know, so anyways,
I know you gotta move.
I'm gonna go out to my garage.
Okay.
And,
I'll give you a second. I'm gonna just go through. I keep a transition bag or my race bag. I've got all my race belts on here that I may want to use or lend out if someone forgot one. I keep my visor on here. I actually have my timing chips are on here. There's somewhere. There's my timing chip here. So I keep everything on my bag. And then I just put in my race gear. I actually have a transition towel in there, but I'll give you my number one tip for triathlon transition. And I don't know if I want to give this away, but
you will. We don't have to. I'm not going to give away all my tricks.
All right, so here it is. This right here.
Yeah, except for you can't use that at the national park.
I can put it on the end of the pole and then in there.
I thought we weren't allowed to do that at Lake Mead.
I don't know, maybe you're not.
You're not supposed to.
It's on the bike rack.
Yeah, no one's probably going to say anything. My trick is I always have a red towel.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because you got to find your spot.
Yeah, I keep the same red towel. This is my transition towel. I use it in you know, and that's actually something we probably should say is, depending on the race you're at, you may not get to be able to set up. You may actually have what's called a clean transition, where you know. So, for example, like Ironman, you don't get to set up your transition like this.
Mhm.
You get a bag and you go to a changing tent, and the only thing at your bike is your bike, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. That's actually totally different.
Yeah. So maybe before our first Ironmans of the year or whatever, we'll do a how to handle that side.
Yeah.
But I like your idea of the flag, though. I really do. And you know, I always try to find a landmark for sure. You know, and I keep that. I definitely keep that in mind. If I set up my bike the night before, so a lot of races, I actually take a picture of the whole transition area, and then you know, sometime that evening I go, you know, look at the picture just to mentally have it.
Yep.
In my mind. And because things do look different, right? If you set your bike up at 2:30 in the afternoon and then you race the next morning at 7 a.m., the light is different.
Yep.
And honestly, like maybe when you set it up, there's only like 5 bikes on your rack.
Mhm.
And then you come back the next morning, there's 30.
Yep.
Right. And so things look different. My thing, and I'm gonna say this, and I really strongly believe this, is you should keep your transition area tight. What I mean by tight is don't have any extra junk hanging around. Like I love the fact you have a backpack. I have a backpack too, and anything I'm not using goes in the backpack, and I go put the backpack somewhere else. And I only keep things that I have to have in my transition area, and I really strongly believe that. I don't know about you, but I mean, I assume you're the same.
I think that's great. I love it. So I want to see how you set up your order of stuff on the towel.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my camera a little closer.
Okay.
I got it on wheels.
And I've got you on the full screen for speaker view, so we just see you.
Let's see if we can get this tilted. Okay, so there's my towel.
Okay, so I set things up from kind of front to back with how I'm going to need them. So helmet is here. Notice I also keep my straps open like this. Okay, don't have your straps inside your helmet. Done that before where you're trying to put it on, have them open, and then when you put it on, I grab it by the straps and then put it on. Okay, so one motion, clip it, good to go.
And you keep your visor on?
Visor on.
Okay.
I can get it on with my visor on, so I don't have to mess around with it.
Okay.
The only exception is if it's a really, really humid morning. I'll actually have the visor up and I'll go out maybe like a mile or two and then flip my visor. This visor can flip, and just so I don't fog it up before I before I get going. So that's the little exception.
Okay.
Then I have my shoes, my bike shoes. Now it depends on the course. Sometimes I'll have my shoes attached to my bike. Sometimes I don't. It really depends. So, you know, just thinking of the last race I did, it was nice grass to run on, and no problem having my shoes flipped in. I've had transition areas where it's just not advantageous. So, for example, at Rage or our race course, I don't have them clipped in because there's no advantage, because the speed and going up a hill to start, it's more of a hassle to get your shoes on. So it really does depend. So if my shoes are not on the bike, they're on the ground, and then if I'm gonna wear socks, so for me, a half distance or above, I wear socks. Olympic distance or sprint, I don't. I have my socks, and I have them actually, kind of see that they're actually half flipped.
Yep.
So I can get them on easier when my feet are wet. Got my shoes all open as much as they can be open, and put them on, and I'm good to go. And I have literally nothing else to do to get on my bike other than maybe take my wetsuit off, which is always the problem. And then, so let's assume these are.
Speaking of, when you take it off, you have a spot for it when you
take my shoes off for the bike.
Your wetsuit. Where do you?
Oh yeah, I put it on the rack.
Okay.
Yeah, so I throw it on the bike rack. Fortunately, being a slow swimmer, there's usually lots of room on the bike rack at that point. But no, I throw it on the rack. If there's no room, then I would try and throw it as far forward as I could, like underneath the front wheel. And well, actually, the front wheel will be on the ground most of the time.
Yep.
Okay, so then that's T1. Now T2, like I said, pride myself on going super quick through T2. So have my race belt, have it open, number down. So I don't put my pro tip. Don't put your race belt on as you're standing still. I put it on when I'm starting to run.
Yep.
So I can do that as I'm running.
Right.
So I grab that. I actually keep a run watch, because it depends on the race, but I usually don't have my running watch in my on the bike. So have a watch specifically for running. Same thing. I don't put it on. I'm just holding it. I run out with it, and I can start it in my hand, and then as I run, I can get it on. For a long race, plug for Hot Shot. I keep a Hot Shot cramp juice.
Oh, nice.
So I just put that in my pocket. I have a gel pack. John might recognize that from the ground at ZLMC.
That's right.
Put that in the other side.
Yeah.
Shoes with elastic laces.
Yep.
On quick. Yeah, I'm just because and actually, you know, you and I both do flying discounts, so we're not having to take our shoes off. Our shoes are already on. They're on the bike.
Yep.
And so I mean, honestly, I bet the time at my bike, 20 seconds.
Okay.
Maybe 20 to 25 seconds is it. Like it's snappy, because like we've talked about it before. If you're not moving forward in a triathlon, you're wasting time.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's how I set mine up. I have nothing extra.
Okay, so let's talk. Your bike shoes would be in the pedals at this point.
Yeah.
At what point in the bike segment do you actually get out of your shoes?
That depends on the course.
Okay.
As well. So I'm move this back. So for me, if it is an uphill finish, which is rare, but like, you know, I don't know if you
just see your knees now.
Yeah. If it's an uphill finish, for example, like Sand Hollow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it might be a little bit later.
Yeah.
If it's a downhill finish, like we have at our race and at Rage, you know, basically when I say start the downhill, start taking it off, because I'm really not pedaling.
No, that's right.
There's not really much advantage to pedaling.
if anything, I kind of like that because I don't have to work. I can actually bring my heart rate all the way down. Just take my shoes off. If I pedal on that downhill, I'm going to gain 2 seconds. So instead, take my time, get my shoes off, bring my heart rate down, start planning T1 in my mind. If it's dead flat, I would say no more than a minute. You know, maybe 30 seconds before the end. I'm pretty good at getting them off.
Yeah, right.
You know, I don't know. How about you?
For our races and Rage, any race down at Boulder Beach, the same as you, I make that turn off Lakeshore, start going down the hill. And once I pick up enough speed, I'll get out of the shoes at that point. And so really, you know, early, if you will, prior to transition. So then there's no worry about, you know, hustling and getting out. But like you, for Sand Hollow, I actually do I try to get my feet. So Sand Hollow, you make a right turn, and now you're going into the park, and then you're about 1/10 of a mile, maybe 2/10, and then you go uphill, and then you're right at transition. So when I make that right turn is where I actually try to get out of my shoes at that point.
Okay. See, I wait till I get up that first little the first incline. There's a little flat area.
Yep.
And I kind of feel like I don't have much speed at that point, anyways, because I'm going up a hill.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a tricky one.
It is a tricky one. That's right. So I'd like to get in, you know, on top my feet on top of my shoes prior to going up that last hill. That's what I try to do.
Yeah, and I don't think there's much disadvantage either way.
Yeah.
As long as you have it, and I'll tell you, like, you know, when I go to a new race, I go and look at it. I'll go and walk.
You know.
Last 200-300 meters.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just to see, and even for me, like, find a landmark.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And one that's not movable, so not a car or something like that, but find a landmark and say, okay, at this point, I'm gonna take my shoes off, and or take my feet out of my shoes. And I think that's also a good little tip for people: is walk it, find a landmark.
And there are some races where I do not take my feet out.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
If I know it's going to be a long run, I don't know. Sometimes it depends on the surface. That I'll say, you know, purposely, I'm going to stay in my shoes for getting off the bike and then staying.
I'm the same way. If it's for me, I've been in some races where it's really muddy.
Yeah.
You know, or it's or rough and gravelly, or you know, there's a lot of bad transition areas out there. Parking lots that are, you know, just in bad shape. So yeah, I'm like you too. For especially a new race, it's the day before kind of decision. You walk it and you kind of say, do I want to have bare feet, you know, running on the surface or not?
Okay, so let's talk about your bike. You have it set up handlebars up, which makes sense.
Well, that's just because this is my normal rack.
Yeah, but and there are some races where you rack that way.
Yeah.
But a lot of the races are rear wheel in. And so
most races it would look, you know, it would look more like this, right? So it would actually be the saddle would be on would be held up like this.
Yeah.
And this, you know, there'd be a bar here, and my saddle would be like that.
Mm-hmm. And then most of the time when I have to put my saddle on the rack, I have to put my transition at the front wheel. But I know it's race specific, and you've got to figure out, you know, which way things are being set up, and which way you're bringing this actually is something you got to figure out is, you know, how you're taking your bike off the rack, or how you put your bike on the rack if you're racking your seat. And the options are, how do you do yours? Do you do it the front of the seat on the rack?
Front of the seat.
Okay.
Front of the seat.
There are some seats and some systems where you can rack the back.
They got a hook on them. Yeah. And I guess I could hook mine underneath my water carrier here. But then to me, it's like maybe a little bit more awkward.
Right. And then it's always good, you know, not every rack is the same. And you got to figure out, when you take your bike off the rack, does your seat fit under the rack? And, you know, you got to know that ahead of time, and that sometimes is what makes me decide: am I going to put the front of my seat on the rack and put my seat under, or am I going to do the back because my bike won't fit under the rack, if you will? So because
my bike is pretty small; it's extra small, and so my issue is actually my front wheel doesn't touch the ground, and so then it's really unstable.
Yeah.
So I actually bring tape. And I'll oftentimes tape my seat, the front of my seat to the rack.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Especially if it's windy, you know, because my front wheel's not on the ground. So, you know, the last thing I want is my bike falling over and knocking everybody else's bikes down. And I don't know why some of these transition areas, they get these really high racks.
Yeah.
And I guess, I don't know, just maybe kind of small.
No, that's a great point. Sometimes I want the high rack because if you've got bottles sticking out the back, sometimes to get your bike under that, it can be a bit of a awkward, where you gotta finagle your bike in just the right way. You gotta do like a big wheelie and slide it out, whatever it is. But you got to figure that out ahead of time. So when you rack your bike, you gotta practice even before your race to say, okay, how am I going to get this bike off the rack?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess, John, the whole point we've said it so many times tonight is a lot of stuff just needs to be practiced. Like you spend hours running, hours swimming, or days biking, right? And a lot of people that I know in triathlon, they spend very little time concentrating on the little things here.
Yeah. And
it's like little things that can add up.
And the transitioner does not need to be complex. I mean, what I love about what you have there, it's simple. It's you only have what you need there.
Yeah. I have nothing that I don't need. The only thing that I might have, depending on the time of the year, I might have a sunscreen.
Yeah. See, I have my visor. I'll put a visor with my shoes.
Yeah. And then I actually don't like running with a visor in a race. I find that it just gets me hotter. So, but I'll just take some sunscreen real quick. And I don't even have it in a bottle. I actually have it on like a pad and just it's super quick, put on my head, maybe on my shoulders. I like it when the races have when you're leaving the transition zone, they get the big pumpers. I'll run by have you ever seen any races?
Right. Dispensers.
And you just take it and you pump, put it in your hands, you go. The other thing I've started to think about doing, and I haven't done it yet, is I've actually contemplated, I don't know if you've done this, is actually having a bottle to run out with that I'm going to get rid of.
I've done that. Yeah.
And I think for St. George this year, I'm going to do that. And literally just have a bottle of something liquid with some fuel in it. So my first, as I'm feeling horrible running, I can have a drink and then get rid of that. So the first time I can get rid of it.
I've run with a waist belt especially in our hot races, either here in Las Vegas or up in St. Hollow. I'll put a run belt on and take a bottle for an Olympic or longer. I'm toying around with possibly using a run vest though for instead of a waist belt. So I've started running one. If we get to an Ironman this year, I may actually use the run hydration system, vest system, as opposed to the belt system. We'll see.
Now I'm at the mercy of the aid stations, but in the COVID year, who knows, right? Like we may have to be more self-sufficient. And
well, for our Tri Club race, we're not going to have an aid station. So if people want fluid on the 5K, they've got to take it with them. So, and
then I'm gonna add one thing to that. Are you ready? Nope. I don't know in the literature of a triathlete dying of dehydration.
No.
So we're talking about our race, a 5K. You don't need water. You could be out there 2 hours. which you're not going to be because you could walk it in 2 hours, obviously.
And you're likely not to die from dehydration anyhow. You're
Exactly.
die from high core temp.
Exactly. There you go.
So,
But in a race of that distance, you're even if it was 100 degrees, which is you're going to be fine without having water. Is your mouth going to be dry?
Yep.
Is it going to be a little uncomfortable? Yeah.
So my desert tip: run with gum.
Yeah, we've talked about that before too. I did the same. I don't do it in a triathlon.
Mm-hmm. No, I do, and it helps because I hate that super dry mouth feel during a run, and so a lot of times that's where the water is nice. But yeah, take some gum, and no, it's not as bad. It can still be bad, but
you know what? Triathlon, racing can be hard.
yeah.
Like if you're trying your hardest, it's going to be hard, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing. So,
yeah. Well, this has been fun. I like how you have things set up. I like how clean that is, and it's practiced, and you're very deliberate. It's perfect.
Yeah, I've seen so many messed up transition zones. The one thing I will tell you is, and this is another little pro tip, and the last thing I'm going to say is try and keep your shoes close to your bike, like as close to your wheel as possible. This actually happened to me, and it was in a big race. It was a national championship race. I get to T1, and I can't find one of my bike shoes. And I had my stuff set up a little bit further, and someone must have kicked it.
Yeah.
And I looked around probably 90 seconds before I actually found it, and it was pretty far away, my one bike. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Right?
Yes.
It's always T1 problems happen. So subsequently, I've really tried to get my stuff close to my wheel of my bike, wherever that is. Like, so someone doesn't trip over it or kick it or something.
Because you don't need a lot of room.
You don't.
When you're putting stuff on or taking stuff off. And so
when I originally had this set up, what is that, like 18 inches across, maybe?
Yeah.
It's not you don't need a lot of room.
No.
And it actually kind of is a pet peeve of mine when people take up a huge amount of space, especially on ones that aren't spaced out.
Yeah.
Most of the high level races, you got a number, and you're going to be where you're going to be.
Yep.
But I just think that, like everything in life, you're going to have people that are not conscious of their decisions and their impacts on other people. But that's just.
Yep. No, I think that's right. And just keep everything tight. And again, we're going to have, for our SOP to do our race, our operating procedures, we're actually going to have our bikes 6 feet apart. So you're going to have plenty
lots of room.
Yeah, I don't know if
luxury
6 feet, but we're gonna try to really space people out so you can stretch your legs if you need to, but still don't practice as if you're going to have a tight transition. So
the way I look at our races, those are practice races, right? Like practice how you're going to do it when you're going to do another race.
Yep.
Awesome, John. Well, thanks. That was a fun Friday night.
Yeah, well, this has been fun. So we covered the 2 big areas of transition. One, how to go faster and be organized and practice. And then even, a little bit of the physiology, mechanics, and motor coordination of this. So
yeah. And a little bit about warming up. That was a good talk tonight. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Well, me too.
Right.
Good chat.
Well, have a good weekend and a good spring break. You gonna finish the trailer this week?
I may be able to, we'll see. Or I may be able to get it. My goal right now, because finish is a relative term.
Yeah, well, you'll probably never finish.
Yeah, you gotta define finish.
Make it livable and towable.
What my goal is going to be, and this is my operational definition of finish, is that I can tow it. And so if I can tow it, then I will say I will claim victory that it is done, but it won't be done, but it will be towable, because there's all sorts of things I got to do after I can get it towable. So
I would give you maybe a little different operational definition. Maybe
you could tow it and your wife will agree to sleep in it.
Oh, no. Then it will never be done. It will never be done at that point. So I don't know if she will ever sleep in it. So
Fair enough.
unless it's
Fair enough.
everything's sold out and we're driving.
There's no other option.
Yeah. I'll tell you, it's going to be comfortable if at the end of the day everything works out. It's actually going to be pretty comfortable. So I've got I already picked up mattresses. I've got some toppers, some memory foam topper. I'm going to be loving it. So
I'm jealous. I'm not jealous about the work you've done. I'm going to be jealous of the end product.
Well, it's
we were talking about it last week at coffee with the post swim coffee group, and I was like, yeah, John's doing this awesome project, and I'm like, I'm just going to go buy one. So it's well done.
It certainly would have been easier and probably less expensive than what I'm doing, but I will know where every screw goes. So
yeah. Well, the good thing is we talked about it, like it's kind of like a bike. Every screw, every bolt, every piece. So if anything goes wrong, you can fix it.
I've got the scars to prove it too. So.
Yeah, you do. Both physical and emotional.
I still got 10 fingers right now. So, hey Ted, great talking with you.
Yeah, we'll talk next Friday.
Yep, and you'll be in the midst of your training camp.
Training camp. Yeah, I was actually thinking about maybe keeping a little journal and give an update. We'll see.
A video journal, vlog, a vlog.
Maybe I should try that. Yeah. A vlog.
Yeah, add it to your YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. All right, cool, John.
Hey, good talking.
Yep. Have a good week.
Thanks, you too.